Counter-Strike 2, is it real? That's a question that many of us have asked ourselves over the last couple of weeks, with rumours circling, leaks with some legitimacy behind them, and Nvidia drivers perhaps revealing more than they should. So today we're going to take a deep dive into this and to see what all of the fuss is about. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like and a comment. What do you think? Is this game real or not? CSGO, or Counter-Strike Global Offensive, that's the latest version of Counter-Strike to use its full name, is now over 10 years old, and last week, believe it or not, it broke its all-time concurrent player count, hitting 1.4 million players. That's pretty incredible for such an old game, but there is slightly more to the story than players simply enjoying CSGO. And while Counter-Strike is just as popular as ever, and CSGO in particular always has had a healthy player base, lots of players are jumping back into the game now because for some time these rumours have been swirling around of either a huge update or a new game entirely with the introduction of Source Engine 2. Before we actually touch on the Source 2 rumours though, and go into whether it's a new game or simply an update, I wanted to talk about why CSGO has needed an overhaul for some time now, and why an update or a sequel perhaps makes sense. Counter-Strike itself is a fairly simple game. It's perfected the attack and defend game mode. It's not overly complex, and I don't expect the core of the game to change much either if this new update is true or any coming down the line in the future. The issue though is that the engine is now showing its age, and this is most noticeable with the back-end systems rather than with the game itself. Changing graphics settings, for example, while you're in a game either hangs the game for a long period of time. If you're lucky, you'll get back in, or it will crash the game entirely if you're not lucky. Of course, that could cost you a round or two in a game of matchmaking. One of the many pluses of CSGO is that you can see any game that you've played in matchmaking, and you can download the demo or replay of that game and you can watch it back. This is great if you want to improve and see where you went wrong, or perhaps where a player has popped up somewhere and you've no idea how they snuck through, or maybe you wanted to check if someone was cheating or learn a new tactic, whatever it might be. Now, sadly, while it's great to have that functionality, the actual replay system is woefully out of date. The controls are terrible, and if you start and pause it too much, the recording goes all choppy, and in general, it's a nightmare to rewind and work with. It's limited by the tech in the game. Now, over the years, there's also been many other numerous issues with animations, hitboxes, smoke glitches, FPS drops, and the list goes on. And at the end of the day, Source 1 released in 2004. CSGO released 10 years later, and there was a huge gulf in those games, and I expect something similar with the new update. Even if it's not visually apparent straight away, there will definitely be a huge overhaul of the parts of the game that we can't see, and it will be beneficial. So where has all of this speculation come from? Well, at the beginning of March, it was discovered that the latest Nvidia drivers have support for a new app with the exes of CSGO2.exe and cs2.exe. It's also listed as Counter-Strike 2 in the details, and that's coming straight from an Nvidia driver, so perhaps the writing is already on the wall. Now, this isn't the first time there have been rumblings about CS2 though. For the past few years, snippets of code have been popping up in the game and update data. Whenever there's a game update for CSGO or Dota 2, people are finding little bits that hint towards an update. Dota 2, as you may know, has already been utilizing Source 2 for some time now. The problem with all of these code snippets though is that it's become a bit of a running joke, and no update has ever materialized for CS. Almost 3 years ago, players felt that there was a Source 2 update right around the corner for it never to happen. This time I think is different though. So what's different? What's changed? Well, along with the driver, what confirmed to me that an update is definitely down the road was a story by reputable websites and journalists. Richard Lewis, for example, is a very well-respected esports journalist, and he made a lengthy post about it on his website confirming the existence of the game. Richard said that anonymous sources had confirmed to him the existence of a new version of CS, and that it's been in development for quite some time. Not only that, but a beta for the game would be dropping towards the end of March. That's literally a couple of weeks, so if it's true, exciting times ahead. What improvements can we expect though? Well, other than parts I've already covered, one area CSGO definitely needs an improvement in is the matchmaking system, because again, it's very outdated, with lots of players utilizing other ways to play matches such as the Faceit website rather than the actual inbuilt matchmaking system. And one of the biggest reasons for this is that because the official matchmaking servers are limited to a 64 tick rate, but the Faceit servers run at 128. For anyone who perhaps isn't aware of what that means, think of it as how many updates the server is getting. The more updates that the server sends and receives from the players, the more accurate the game's movement and shooting will be. If you play the game regularly, going from 64 to 128 tick servers, everything just feels smoother and snappier. The hit reg feels a lot more consistent too. Richard Lewis's source seemed to suggest that 128 tick servers will exist in matchmaking in this new game, which would be an incredible improvement and music to players' ears. I've also seen suggestions or talk of a dynamic or variable tick rate system that would switch out certain non-important things to a lower tick rate and prioritize others. Exactly how that would work, I'm not sure, but any improvement to the hit reg on matchmaking servers will be welcomed by all players. For those of you that remember the release of CSGO, the game went into beta first, allowing players to test it for quite some time before it released. It seemed the same will happen this time, or CSGO will continue as normal, but you might be able to opt in to play the new CS2 or Source 2 version whenever you feel like it. It was a while back now, but based on my experience with CSGO, when the beta first released, it was very buggy and rough around the edges. So I wouldn't expect a completely smooth experience to start with, but that's what betas are for. These days, Counter-Strike has a huge esports scene, with tournaments taking place both online and on LAN, seemingly on a weekly basis, so I fully expect the base CSGO version will continue to be the current esports title until Valve feel like the new version is good enough and up to scratch. Interestingly, Richard Lewis also reported that a number of unnamed professional players have already been flown out to Seattle to try out this new version of the game, which I think is a positive thing because you're going to get the absolute best feedback from the top professional players. I recall that they did a similar thing back with CSGO. And the beauty of this is that Counter-Strike isn't a game that needs to worry about catering to a pro player base and a casual player base because they're both playing exactly the same game, just at different skill levels. Any improvements to the overall experience are felt all the way down the rankings. The game that the pros play is the same as that you play in matchmaking. With a new engine though comes changes, of course, even small ones that might affect movement, grenades, and of course recall patterns. But back in late 2020, it was reported that Source 2 was backwards compatible with Source 1, and so the game might be 95% the same. Although I personally do expect a noticeable improvement to the visuals with the upgrade to Source 2, although I bet that most players are going to run it on low settings anyway. There were also reports that maps have been getting reworks now as far back as 2020 to bring them up to the Source 2 standard, but there's no clue at the minute just how different they'll be, or if some of them will be largely the same. One thing is for certain though, the community tools, especially for map makers, will be massively improved with the jump to a new engine. What a lot of players are worried about though isn't to do with the game itself, but actually the cosmetic market. Currently on the CSGO market, there are skins, mostly knives, going for $1,500 to $2,000. There are reports of cosmetic items being sold privately for hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you've got the right skin with the right sticker, you never know. And with the amount of cases that players have opened and unopened and the amount of skins that they've collected over the years, I doubt anyone wants to lose them. And certainly, their value might plummet. Numerous sources have said that this just won't happen though, and that skins will carry across to the new version, which would at least in part confirm that the same weapons and items will exist. Just going back to those earlier player count numbers, 1.4 million concurrent players for a competitive FPS franchise that was released over 20 years ago. Counter-Strike remains as one of the most popular and competitive FPS games out there. And the fact that so many players are still jumping into it so many years later just goes to show how good the game actually is, and I hope will continue to be. Will it be Counter-Strike 2, a completely new experience, or will it just be CSGO updating to Source 2? We're not entirely sure yet. Only time will tell. If it's the end of March, well, we're going to find out very soon, aren't we? Whilst you could argue with that many players, Valve don't need to lift a finger and can continue on with CS in its current state. But perhaps after all these years, it could use a fresh lick of paint and some upgrades in the engine room to keep that fire raging. That said, let me know your thoughts down below again, guys. Thank you for watching. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video, dislike if you didn't, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.